Welcome to the Loyal Opposition Podcast. I'm Bernie Flowers, one of Uncle Sam's wayward children. I believe that our country's best days are still in front of us, but if those best days are to come, we need to change the direction of the country now, before it's too late. I intend to talk about important issues and topics every week in hopes of helping to improve our country and our way of life. Please like, share, and subscribe. Our guest for episode 49 is Mr. Corey Parkinson. He's the owner and founder of Night Wolf Tactical. Mr. Parkinson is an expert, an experienced instructor with multiple certifications. He is certified by the NRA as a Basic Pistol Instructor. He's certified by the Utah Bureau of Investigation, as well as Florida, Virginia, and Arizona as a firearms instructor to teach concealed carry courses. His focus on safe and proper firearms instruction is the driving force behind Night Wolf Tactical. A Navy vet, his credentials include NRA Certified Basic Pistol Instructor, NRA Certified Concealed Carry Instructor, Maryland State Police Qualified Handgun Instructor, the Utah Bureau of Criminal Investigation Firearms Instructor, Qualified Handgun Instructor, as well as Concealed Carry Permits for Maryland, DC, Arizona, Florida, Pennsylvania, and Utah. He's an NRA certified rifle instructor. He's an NRA certified safety officer, and most importantly, a Second Amendment expert. He's also a husband, a father, a son, and a brother. To say that Mr. Parkinson is an expert on and an advocate for our Second Amendment rights is an understatement. Without any further ado, Corey, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, sir. How are you?
Man, didn't I tell you to stop calling me sir? You make me feel old. Come on, Navy, help me out.
I'm doing great, Bernie.
All right, you ready for some questions?
I am.
Outstanding. Let's go. First, tell us about the Second Amendment to the United States Constitution. What does it mean to you?
Well, the Second Amendment, as you know, states that a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. To me, what that means is that private citizens, especially law-abiding private citizens, have the right to protect themselves against government tyranny if it arises. I think the misconception that people have in today's society is that this amendment specifically was written at a time when we were fighting the Revolutionary War. And so they see militia and they automatically correlate it to a unorganized military group. The problem with that narrative is that our forefathers had the foresight that as societies evolve and cultures evolve and governments evolve, power corrupts. And at some point in the future, the possibility of a tyrannical government here in the U.S. could arise. Therefore, instilling this amendment allows the people to keep the government in check, right? Because if for instance, what we see in totalitarian governments such as China, the government could just show up at your door, incarcerate you for going against their beliefs, and you don't stand a chance. Well, here in the U.S., the government can't just show up at your door and throw you in jail for having a personal opinion because of that Second Amendment. So for me, it instills in me a sense of liberty that the government can't just force their will upon me because of this amendment.
Outstanding answer. I appreciate hearing what you have to say. Got another question for you. Are you ready?
Yes.
Please explain the difference between responsible and safe firearms ownership and irresponsible, unlicensed firearms ownership.
Okay. So to me, responsible gun ownership is a person that first and foremost, knows about the firearm, understands the potential and power behind the firearm, may seek additional training, but somebody that exercises precautions, such as having a safe inside your home when you have children, something I'm very passionate about. Also, utilizing it for the purposes it's designed for: self-defense, range training, maybe sports shooting. Irresponsible gun ownership, it is what we see on TV every day. We see the mass shootings, we see the gang violence. All right, these are people that number one, most of the time didn't obtain this firearm legally. Number two, they're using it for purposes that it wasn't designed for. At the core, irresponsible gun ownership is what leads the violence that we see in today's society. You don't see a person with 4 conceal carry permits and multiple hours of training going out there and shooting innocent people, right? And that's because that person spent an absurd amount of money for his training, for his ability to carry legally, for the firearm. Therefore, he prizes that right. It holds more value to him. What you actually see is these people that tend to obtain these firearms through stolen vehicles or unlocked safe firearms, or I like to call them the ghost guns. These things were obtained illegally. They're in illegal possession of them, and the purpose is nothing more than to harm innocent individuals.
Understand. Great answer, and I appreciate it. You ready for another one?
Yes.
Outstanding. Tell us about what Marylanders can and cannot do legally to defend themselves and their property.
So, in Maryland, you cannot use lethal force to defend property. Per Maryland criminal justice jury instructions, lethal force cannot be used to defend property. Now, before using lethal force in a self-defense situation, your shooting must meet certain criteria. First and foremost, you must believe that you're in immediate or imminent danger of bodily harm. You also, the jury also has to believe that your belief was reasonable. Okay, so for instance, if a person displays a firearm towards me, okay, I've already met those first 2 criteria because I already believe that I'm in immediate or imminent danger of bodily harm. And of course, my belief is reasonable because the threat has been displayed. But Maryland also requires a duty to retreat. In a self-defense situation, you are obligated to try to flee or retreat if it is safe to do so. I personally don't see in a self-defense situation where a person has a gun pointed at me where any avenue of retreat is going to be possible. But at the end of the day, it is written in the law that Maryland does have a duty to retreat. I would say that it jeopardizes your safety more than anything because a criminal has already crossed the threshold between a law-abiding citizen and a criminal for displaying the firearm at you in the first place. So there's nothing preventing him from using it the moment you try to run away and shooting you in the back. But again, Maryland is very, most of the gun laws, especially when it comes to self-defense, are based on case-by-case basis. There's no set common law. So when we look at how Maryland distinguishes self-defense, most of it is jury instructions applied to the jury as you are a defendant on trial, and they have criteria that they have to follow in order to determine whether you are guilty or not. And that criteria is belief that you are in immediate or imminent danger of bodily harm, your belief is reasonable, and you use no more force than reasonably necessary to defend yourself in light of the threatened or actual harm. Now, I also take that threatened piece and I break it down for my students as well. Okay? For a female, say 5'1", 5'2", 118 pounds, right? A gentleman 6'5", 6'6", 280, 300 pounds, you could articulate in a court of law that this person has the power without using any type of weaponry to inflict serious or bodily harm up to and including death, right? So that individual of that size could articulate in a court case, well, I had to use lethal force because this man had the power and the capacity to cause death, right? A person of my size, 5'6", 230, I can't articulate that same argument because I still stand better of a chance than the first individual. So it's a very fine and gray line that you have to walk before using your firearm in a self-defense situation. Now, that doesn't apply inside your home. Inside your home, Maryland doesn't necessarily have a castle doctrine, but you are obligated not to retreat, or you're not obligated to retreat if you are inside your home the moment this occurs. Okay? But that's where having some type of attorney and legal coverage is going to come into play, because the moment you use that firearm, you're going to want an attorney that's going to help prove that case with self-defense.
Wow, there's a lot to know here.
It's a lot to unpack there.
Yes,
and again, because Maryland doesn't necessarily have common law, it's all case-by-case basis. You really, really are walking through the weeds, so to speak, the moment you use your firearm.
Wow. Corey, you're an expert at what you do. People want to hear from you. I'm going to stop asking questions, and what I'm going to say is, tell the people what's on your mind.
Well, it's a crazy time we're in right now, Bernie. We have probably the most direct and open president when it comes to wanting to take away the Second Amendment rights.
Mm-hmm.
Biden's whole career has been built on taking away firearms from private citizens. And he's very candid about it. He pulls no punches in all his pressers. Even if it doesn't involve a firearm, he immediately starts talking about wanting to defeat the NRA again, which he didn't, or the assault weapons ban. But what he fails to realize is there's already been established court cases that say that you can't do these things, right? We saw DC versus Heller, in which it was established that you cannot ban commonly owned firearms. The most commonly owned firearm in the U.S. is an AR-15. Yet he continues to campaign on that platform. We right now have 8 assault weapon bans cases right before the Supreme Court. Now the Supreme Court will have to decide whether you can ban AR-15s or not. They have no choice but to do so. And one of the cases actually applies for here in Maryland. I believe the case is now Bianchi versus Brown. But in this case, Maryland implemented an assault weapons ban. The ban has been put under an injunction up to this ruling here. And now arguments were heard last week before the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court finally has to take a case in where they decide whether it is legally constitutional to ban AR-15s. I'm going to tell you right now, with the way that the Supreme Court is leaning these days, especially when it comes to the post-Bruin era, we're not going to see it happen. You're not going to see it happen. You're not going to ban the most commonly owned firearm in the country. But what we also are seeing is this push by mainstream media to continue to push false narratives. Okay, AR-15s account for 3% of of gun violence related deaths. 3%. Okay. On top of that, when we look at the statistics, and the CDC doesn't put out the most accurate statistics. Actually, there's a website called Gun Info Facts. If you want to check it out, you can find all the statistics you want all day long. And they do very thorough research. Last year, over 46,000 people died in gun-related deaths. Of those 46,000, over 52% were suicides.
Wow. So
what that says to me is that, yes, a gun death is a tragedy. All deaths are a tragedy. But we're missing that 52%. That 52% is people crying for help. That 52% is people in desperate need of mental health services. And a lot of times it's people that don't know where these services can be found, or they don't believe that they can afford these services. And they are very much affordable. I'm not only a Second Amendment advocate, but I'm a mental health advocate as well. I lost one of my closest friends at 15 to suicide. And what I have seen and I have learned is that people are so afraid to just be like, look, I'm struggling. I'm having a very hard time. And I need help. Right? In a post-lockdown world, We're seeing people lose their jobs at alarming rates. We're seeing people lose their wealth and their finances in an alarming rate, okay, with record inflation. What we're seeing is people during the lockdowns, domestic violence was at an all-time high. All right, child abuse was at an all-time high. And then we also forget about the impact on children as well over these last few years. Okay, these children were denied the ability to socialize with their friends and maybe family members, okay, at moments in their lives where socialization skills were absolutely necessary, right? And then maybe going to school or being around their friends was that escape from the drama at home and the violence at home. And they didn't have that. And now you put them back into the world and you say, okay, everything's okay. Everything's back to normal. Well, especially little kids and teenagers becoming adults, they don't know how to process that. They don't know how to handle that because we as adults don't even know how to handle that. This is the first time in over 100 years that the world came to a stop, right? And everything changed. But you expect everybody to just be mentally okay, and they're not. Last year, over 100,000 people died through suicides.
Terrible.
Okay, and on top of that, as a veteran, 22 veterans a day are committing suicide. And you and I both know that the VA is in shambles, right? The funding is always being cut, right? Veterans out there don't know where the resources are for the help that they need. People of my generation coming home back from Iraq and Afghanistan after 20 years of war, and they don't know how to be put back into regular society. All they know is those 20 years. Yeah. And then we snap our fingers and we just expect everything to be okay. We also have to look at the other statistics. The CDC just started implementing that 18-year-olds are now included in gun violence deaths as part of children. That narrative being pushed is that firearms are the number one killer in children. But if you're going to tell me that an 18-year-old is, under the Constitution, an adult, he has the right to vote, he's charged as an adult if he commits a crime, then you can't apply them into that statistic. Okay? When you remove 18 to 21-year-olds out of that statistic, the number one killer in children is still car accidents. Yeah. It's not gun violence. The reason why they push that narrative is because 18 to 21 is the biggest age group for gang-related violence, right? So it's not the guns that are causing the problem here, right? If you give me a screwdriver and I have bad intentions, are we boycotting Home Depot tomorrow for selling Black & Decker screwdrivers? No. Are we holding Stanley Black & Decker accountable because of that death? No. Right? So we have to start placing accountability on the individuals. We have to start focusing on laws on the books that work. Right? What we've seen across the country is this soft approach on crime. This slap on the wrist and get back out, and everything's going to be okay. And I'll point you to a case here in Baltimore that occurred just 2 years ago around Christmas time. And it was really a heartbreaking case to me as a father. This case revolved around a 2-year-old girl being shot and killed in a crossfire. The perpetrator of this crime was the key suspect in 3 other homicides. But Baltimore's soft approach on crime, okay, allowed this individual to be roaming the streets freely and to kill another individual. And not even an adult at that, a little baby girl, okay? We have to start holding people accountable. If you are a minor caught with a firearm, you go to jail. You don't go to juvie. You don't go back to your parents. You have played a big boy game, and now you pay a big boy punishment. Yeah. Okay? I have 4 children. 2 of my boys are teenagers. Okay? And they know if they're caught in illegal possession of a firearm, they're going to pay the price. All right? And then more than that, I believe education in firearms needs to be at the forefront of change. Yeah. Okay. People need to be educated, whether it's NRA courses, whether it's concealed carry courses. I go as far as even offering courses for children for free, teaching them about firearms and helping them to understand the negative impact if the firearm is used improperly. Okay. And I do this because there's been 3 cases in particular that I really have just upset me. 2 of them involve 3-year-old children, and I have a 3-year-old son myself. The first one was a child in an apartment hallway playing with his father's gun. Now, the father was a convicted felon, so he shouldn't have had the firearm in the first place in the home. The neighbor was actually watching the little boy through the peephole of their door. And what happened was, at one point, this boy put the gun to his head, and at another point, he put it to his own mouth. Now, the firearm was unloaded, and the boy didn't get harmed. But to me, that's unexcusable. Absolutely unexcusable. The father was arrested. The child was taken and put in the custody of the state. The other case happened in Miami. This was a father sitting on the couch, and his gun was wide open, in full view, left on an end table where his 3-year-old daughter picked it up and shot herself in the arm.
Unlicensed.
This negligence. If you have children in the home, you have to have a gun safe. Yeah. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And because children are curious, you can try to hide the fact that there's a gun in the home all day long, but they're going to find it. You have to have some prevention to prevent them from grabbing it, right? And instead of getting this little girl help, the moment she shot herself in the arm, they are on camera trying to come up with a cover story on how she got shot in the first place. It's absolutely absurd. There are simple things that can fix the issues in today's society, but we have to start emphasizing. All right, if you catch a possession charge and you are not lawfully allowed to own a firearm, you go to jail.
Yeah.
No slap on the wrist. No slap on the wrist. You go to jail, whether you're a minor or an adult. Okay.
Unlicensed firearms. That's the big difference. People need to register their firearm.
Register.
Responsible citizens, but unlicensed guns kill people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And more than that, we also have to look at the bigger narrative, okay, or the bigger number. Firearms are used, agreed upon, depending on who you talk to, between 500,000 and 1.5 million times a year in self-defense situations. So while the narrative is always being pushed that guns are the number one killer in this country, when we take away the suicides, there's actually over 22,000 deaths. Okay, to put that in perspective, 117,000 people last year died from fentanyl and opioid overdose. But we're focusing on this 22,000 here. This is the problem, but not this, right? When we put that in perspective to the 500,000 and 1.5 million, firearms actually save almost 100 to 1,000 times more lives than they kill. So where's the disconnect? The disconnect is the soft stance on violent offenders.
Right.
That's the disconnect. If you're a violent or repeat offender, you go to jail. And then one final thing. We look at our president's push on assault weapons ban, right? He prides himself on the 94 weapons ban. Both parties agree that statistics show that ban from 94 to 2004 did not negatively or positively impact gun-related deaths. So what are you platforming on? It didn't work. It didn't push your narrative, and it didn't hurt your narrative. So we have to stop focusing on specific firearms and things of that nature, and we have to start focusing on the crimes being committed. A person behind a gun with an intent to do harm to good citizens is a bad individual. Evil has been around since the time of Adam and Eve. Okay? Right? Whatever faith you have, since the beginning of Adam and Eve, evil has been around. And as long as humans roam this earth, there will always be evil. But you cannot punish the good individuals because of the actions of the bad. You have to punish the bad and hold them accountable for their actions. Or you're never going to have good people.
Corey, you're not going to get any disagreement from me. I got another question for you, though.
Yes.
How can people reach you if they need to?
So, like Bernie said, my name is Corey Parkinson. I'm the owner and founder of Night Wolf Tactical. I'm a firearms trainer and instructor here in Lutherville, Maryland. You can find me on Facebook at Night Wolf Tactical. You can find me on Instagram at nightwolf_tactical. You can find me on TikTok at 2A Corey. And you can also find me on my website at Corey at nightwolftact.com, which is my email address, or nightwolftact.com.
Man, let me tell you something. The people have no idea what an expert you are. You just gave them a little taste, and I'm glad you did it on my show. I want you to come back sometime soon, and just understand that I'm with you. We legal firearms owners, we get a bad rap, and we need folks like you to tell the truth. And so that's one of the reasons I'm doing the things I'm doing, because we just need to turn this thing around.
Absolutely. And at the end of the day, when we're looking at the current landscape of the world, and I'll leave you with this, that Second Amendment is the reason why you never have to worry in this country about a foreign invader coming through our lands. And people take it for granted every day. But what you see in Ukraine, and what you're seeing in Israel, okay, people should be thankful that we have regular citizens to take up arms the moment a person tries. No foreign military wants to walk through Texas, coming through the southern border, and think that they're not going to lose a mass amount of their army as they try to come through Texas. No foreign military is going to walk the foothills of West Virginia without incurring some Uncle Jimbo, okay, and his potato launcher that he's turned into a high-powered firearm, okay? And at the end of the day, we're just law-abiding citizens wanting to essentially protect ourselves against the uprising crime, as well as to prevent tyranny. Because again, power corrupts. And with corruption comes the desire for more power. And what is absolute power? Full control of your constituents.
There you go. Well said. We got to have you back on here. There's a whole lot of stuff we need to talk about. You know I'm a history buff, and we can go all day, brother. But anyway, I am going to be quiet for a little while. I thank you for giving us some of your time. You enjoy your beautiful afternoon and keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you, Bernie. I appreciate the opportunity.
Take care, Corey.
You as well.
Well, that's about it for now. This has been the Loyal Opposition Podcast, produced in association with Liberty Arise Media, Fallback Productions, and other podcasters. I ask that you like, share, and subscribe to this podcast. Be sure to get your copy of my book, Black Values Matter, available as an ebook on Amazon, Audible, and Apple Books. And also remember that I'm running for Congress in Maryland's 3rd District. We have the best chance to win in a generation, and I intend to do just that. Check me out at flowersformaryland.com or on most social media. And lastly, it's okay to disagree, but if you want our country to prosper, we must insist on unity, transparency, and civility from ourselves and our fellow citizens. Thanks for listening to the Loyal Opposition Podcast. I'll see you next week.